वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरोः श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवंश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिनिते नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषशून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्य नाम्ने गौरत्विषे नमः। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कान्त राधाकान्त नमस्तुते तप्त काञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। Hare Krishna. Welcome back. So we are studying chapter 5, Karma Sannyasa Yoga or action in Krishna consciousness. In our previous class, we were studying a section from 17 to 26, but we could finish till 22. So from 23rd to 26 we have to study today. And we see in this chapter only, in the verses 7 to 12, Bhagavan described briefly the realization, action and reaction of action of a perfect jnani. And in this section 17 to 26, Bhagavan is elaborating the vision position and action of a real Jnani. So from 23, 23 we will study today. शक्नोति हैव यः सोढुं प्राक् शरीरविमोक्षणात् कामक्रोधोद्भवं वेगं स युक्तः स सुखी नरः. Shaknoti is able, iha eva in the present body, yaha one who, sodhum to tolerate, prak before, sharira the body, vimokshanat giving up, kama desire, krodha and anger, udbhavam generated from, vegam urges, saha he, yuktaha in trance, saha he, sukhi happy, naraha human being. Translation. Before giving up this present body, if one is able to tolerate the urges of the material senses and check the force of desire and anger, he is well situated and is happy in this world. Then text 24. Yontah sukhontararamasthathantarjyotireva yaha sayogi brahma nirvanam brahma bhutodhigacchati. Yaha one who, antah sukhaha happy from within, antah aramaha actively rejoicing within, tatha as well as, antah jyotihi aiming within, eva certainly, yaha anyone, saha he, yogi a mystic, brahma nirvanam liberation in the supreme, brahma bhutaha being self-realized, adhigacchati attains. Translation. One whose happiness is within, who is active and rejoices within, and whose aim is inward is actually the perfect mystic. He is liberated in the Supreme and ultimately attains the Supreme. Next verse, text 25. लभन्ते ब्रह्मनिर्वाणं ऋषयः क्षीणकल्मषाः छिन्नद्वैधा यतात्मानः सर्वभूतहिते रताः. लभन्ते achieve, Brahmanirvanam liberation in the Supreme, Rishayaha those who are active within, Kshina Kalmashaha who are devoid of all sins, Chinna having torn off, Dvaidhaha duality, Yata Atmanaha engaged in self-realization, Sarva Bhuta for all living entities, Hite in welfare work, Rataha engaged. Translation. Those who are beyond the dualities that arise from doubts, whose minds are engaged within, who are always busy working for the welfare of all living beings, and who are free from all sins, achieve liberation in the Supreme. The next verse also, 26. कामक्रोधो विमुक्तानां यतीनां यतचेतसाम् अभितो ब्रह्मनिर्वाणं वर्तते विदितात्मनाम्. Kama from desires, krodha and anger, vimuktanam of those who are liberated, yatinam, of the saintly persons, yata chetasam, who have full control over the mind, abhitaha, assured in the near future, brahmanirvanam, liberation in the supreme, vartate, is there, vidita atmanam, of those who are self-realized. Translation: those who are free from anger and all material desires, who are self-realized, self-disciplined, and constantly endeavoring for perfection, are assured of liberation in the Supreme in the near future. So we see these 4 verses that we will study together today. So verse number 23, we see that Bhagavan is saying, Shaknoti ihaiva yaha sodhum prak sharira vimokshanat kama krodha udbhavam vegam sa yuktaha sa sukhi naraha. So who is able to control the urges of, or tolerate the urges of desire and anger, he is happy. So tolerating the urge to desire and anger is the source of, we see from this verse. How it is the source of happiness? Because it helps to make a person to progress steadily in spiritual life and therefore attaining transcendental bliss. This is the process. Now, kama krodha udbhavam vegam means the vegam that is originated from kama and krodha, that is desire and anger. As we can remember in chapter 2, second chapter, in 2 verses 62 and 63, dhyayato vishayan pumsaha sangasteshu pajayate sangat sanjayate kama krodho vijayate. So there we saw how dangerous this kama is. And if kama is not satiated, then it is the source, it becomes the source of krodha, that is anger. And in 3rd chapter also, Bhagavan says that, O Arjuna, your most dangerous inner enemies are these 2, kama and krodha. Kama esha, krodha esha, rajoguna samudbhava. And Bhagavan says that these 2 most dangerous enemies always reside within you, in your intelligence, in your mind, and in your senses. And they can be conquered by the knowledge of the Absolute. Jnana Vijnana Nashanam. So it is possible to conquer them by absolute knowledge. And we see when we talked about tolerance in chapter 2, we talked about different kind of tolerance. The first was vega, how to control vega. In Upadeshamrita, we see Rupa Goswami Pad talks about 6 vegas, urges: vacho vegam, manasaha vegam, Krodha Vegam, Juva Vegam, Udara Vegam, Upastha Vegam. So there we see Krodha Vegam and Manasaha Vegam. So mind is the source of this desire, So that is why if we can control these urges, we can actually be at peace. So it is suggested that with intense effort, one must tolerate these disturbances. And that too, of course, before the falling of the material body, as the body without life is never agitated by this vega. So vega sahishnuta is very important. Tolerance, sahishnuta means tolerance. So vega sahishnuta, if we be able to this, then a person can be a Brahmavid, that is knower of Brahman, and Brahmanete stitaha, who always stays in transcendence. And he is called a Goswami, that is, who has conquered all his senses as well as mind. Vijitatma. Jitendriya. Goswami is Jitendriya, similar synonym we can say. Jitendriya, Vijitatma, and Vishuddhatma. Vishuddhatma, who has whose intelligence and Atma is also purified. Now, Bhagavan is talking about a Jnani, a perfect Jnani. He can do this easily. But what about us, who had experienced in this life all these things, and if not, then in the previous lives? So the impressions are very strong in our mind of the sense enjoyments. Kama. So what is the remedy? So that is also in Upadeshamrita, in the second verse, we see that Atyahara, Prayasa, Prajalpa, Niyamagraha, Janasangam, Laulyam, these 6 things we have to avoid. Atyahara means not only overeating, even over accumulation of wealth, etc. Prayasa means over endeavoring. So we should not go for worldly endeavor. Then is prajalpa. We should not talk about the material things, which is of no use, which has no connection with our spiritual advancement. Niyamagraha, that is the things which is favorable for our spiritual growth, not following them. Janasangam means associating with the crooked people who are not in the line of spiritual development. Then is laulyam, that is greed. So these things to be avoided. Otherwise, what we get from this world, from this atyahara and all, we will be able to get superficial happiness, but that is not real sukh. Sukhina raha. That sukh we will not be able to receive. Then what is the solution? Bhagavan says, in the next verse, that is verse 25 and 24, sorry. Yonta sukhontaramas tathantar jyotirev yaha sayogi brahma nirvanam brahma bhutodhigacchati. So antah sukhaha means happy from within. Antah sukhaha, or actively rejoicing within, who is always happy within. Then is antah aramaha. Antah aramaha means Atma Rama. Now see, for as we are prone to receiving superficial happiness, we don't understand how to get happiness within. So, as we discussed in chapter 2 also, for this, we need to test superior things, which is superior than these material things that we generally test. Param drishtva nivartate in 259. Param drishtva nivartate. So we need higher test. Higher test leads to higher consciousness. Higher consciousness means antasukha antararamaha. So we can slowly attain this from chanting, eating prasadam, as it is said in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Sevan mukhe hi juvadau. We should start from our tongue first, as the control of juva is very difficult. As we just said, vacho vegam, manasaha krodha vegam, juva vegam, udaropastha vegam. So vacha and so jiva is actually responsible for both our speech and for our is associated with our testing or eating. So if we can give it higher test by prasadam and chanting the holy name of the Lord, then we can actually be able to conquer the vegam associated with it. And Shravanam, Kirtanam, as we see, Shravanam, Parikshit Maharaja was liberated by the process of hearing only, hearing the Leelas of the Lord. And Shukadeva Maharaja, Shukadeva Goswami, he was liberated. He was indeed a liberated soul. So, Kirtanam, he always chanted the glories of the Lord. Then Narada Muni, we know, who always chants the glory of the Lord. So we see, so param drishtva nivartate means we, as we are attracted to the things of this material world, so we need something which is more powerful in attraction. So it is Krishna, the all-attractive Krishna. As the name suggests, Krishna means the all-attractive. So Atma Rama, that is, as we know, the Vigraha of bliss, Anandam, is Krishna. Akhila Rasamrita Murti. So he is the Murti of all the mellows, all the rasas. So, as we said in our previous class, that constant association of Krishna makes us happy with him. That is why we see the devotees are always so happy. So, as one becomes flawless by the association of Krishna. We studied in our previous class, Nirdosham He Samam Brahma. So, and this happiness and flawless situation we can see of a perfect jnani. And antar jyotihi, that is the inner light which directs the vision to the soul and to the super soul. So he is Brahma Bhuto Digacchati, being self-realized. Adigacchati means attains. Brahma Bhuta Adigacchati, Brahma Nirvanam, that is liberation in the Supreme. So it is possible by controlling the desire and anger, and also as we have been studying in the previous verses, a perfect jnani is able to achieve this state of Brahma Nirvanam. Okay, so 25, verse 25 says, Labhante Brahma Nirvanam Rishayah Kṣīna Kalmashaha Chinna Dvaidha Yatatmanaha Sarva Bhuta Hite Rataha. So Kṣīna Kalmashaha means, Kalmashaha means sin. So Kṣīna Kalmashaha means sinless. We see that our attachment to this temporary world is actually papam, because it leads to grief and lamentation, and that is papam. And we see that attraction to this material world and attraction to the Lord cannot go together. It is not possible. So if one is attracted to the Lord, then automatically his attraction to the material world will be no more there. And Chinna Dvaidha, the first word of the second line, Chinna Dvaidha means free from the dualities arising from doubts. So he goes beyond the duality. Whether this or that, as we always face this problem in our lives. And then is Yatatmanaha. Yatatmanaha, Manaha means engaged in self-realization. Yata Atmanaha, always engaged in self-realization. So then such a person, what the Lord said in these last verses, these are the qualities, this is the vision, position of a perfect jnani. Then what is his action? What he does then after all this? Sarva bhuta hite rataha. So he is then engaged in the welfare of all. We see that as such a person is selfless. So when he thinks to do welfare activities, Bhagavan himself do all the arrangements. Like as we studied from 13 to 16, it means he happily approves the three doers. Bhagavan happily approves this desire of a perfect jnani who is willing to do welfare activities, sarva bhuta hita. So Prakriti makes all the needful arrangement for for him to do this Sarva Bhuta Hita. As we saw in Bhagavatam, Dadichi Muni, who left his body to the Devas, to Indra Deva, in order to make the weapon from his bones to kill Vritrasura. And then Narada Muni, who stood between the Brahmastras. So, a realized soul, a God realized soul, is always ready to engage himself in the welfare activities. So, this is what the next verse, that is verse 26, says. काम क्रोध विमुक्तानां यतीनां यतचेतसाम् अभितो ब्रह्म निर्वाणम वर्तते विदितात्मनाम. So this verse is actually the conclusion of this section, what we are studying from 17 to 26. So here Bhagavan is actually assuring the liberation for the perfect jnani. In a nutshell, as he is free from desire and anger, kama, krodha, vimuktanam, yatinam, yatachetasam. Yatachetasam means who has controlled over the mind. So, and vidita atmanam, that is self-realized. So such a person is eligible for liberation. Brahma Nirvanam, liberation in the Supreme. So as we see, Bhagavan mentioned so many qualities of a jnani. Vishuddhatma, that is a purified one. Vijitatma, self-controlled. Jitendriya, who has conquered the senses. Sarva Bhutatma, who is compassionate to all. Tat Buddhayaha, whose intelligence is fixed in the Supreme. Tat Atmanaha, whose mind is fixed in the Supreme. Tan Nishthaha, whose faith is fixed in the Supreme. Tat Parayanaha, whose only shelter is the Lord. Samadarshi, that is who has equal vision. Nirdosham, who is flawless. Asammudhaha, who is not deluded. Brahmavid, who is a knower of Brahman. Asakta Atma, who is completely detached or unattached from the material things. Vindati Atmani, who always is happy within. Antar Sukhaha, the synonym we can say. Antararamaha, that is Atma Rama. Kṣṇa Kalmashaha, who is sinless. Chinnadvaidha, who is above the dualities. Yatatmanaha, who is engaged in self-realization. And Sarva Bhuta Hiterataha, who is always engaged in the welfare activities of the whole world. So all these qualities Bhagavan mentioned in different verses. And in this last verse 26 of this section, Bhagavan is actually giving the synopsis. That is, who is free from desire and anger, whose mind is controlled, who is self-realized, he is able for liberation in the Supreme. So we see that of the saintly people who are engaged in striving for liberation, who is in supreme consciousness, he is the best. Why? Why he is the best? It is said in Śrimad Bhagavatam, in the 4th canto, chapter 22, verse 39, Maitreya Rishi says to Vidura, while narrating the conversation between Sanata Kumara and Prithu Maharaja. He says, Yad pada pankaja palasha vilasa bhaktya karmashayam grathitam udgrathayanti santaha tadvam nariktamatayo yatayo piruddha sroto gunastvam maranam bhaja vasudevam. So just try to worship Vasudeva in devotional service, like the Rishi says. And Sanata Kumara also said to Prithu Maharaja. So it is the narration. So what is said here, that even the great sages are unable to control the irresistible force of senses, like the devotees who are engaged in serving the lotus feet of the Lord. Devotees are able in uprooting the deep grown desire for fruitive activities. We see that the Lord is maintaining us. As we know, the Lord is our maintainer. So we can also reach Him by constant remembrance. As He is maintaining us, so by constant remembrance, we can also reach Him. So it is explained here in this purport by Prabhupada as the analogous example of fish, tortoise, and birds who maintain their offspring. Darshana dhyana samsparshair matsya kurma vihangamaha swanyapatyani pushnanti tathaham api padmaja. So by darshana, dhyana, and samsparshe. So similarly, Bhagavan is also maintaining us. He is always, His sight is always on us. He is always, as we say, He is Sakshi and Anumanta. So He is always witnessing what we are doing. So we cannot hide a single thing, a single action, a single thought from Him. And similarly, if we always remember the Lord by the process of remembrance only, we can also reach Him. So we see that the Arjuna's question in the beginning of this chapter, the similar question which he asked in the beginning of chapter 3 also. And here in this chapter, he asked that karma sannyasa and karma yoga, between these two, which one is better? So in relation to this, Bhagavan has said all these things which we are discussing. We see in chapter 4, verse number 33, Bhagavan said that sarvam karma akhilam partha jnane parisamapyate. So karma culminates in jnana by yajna. As we studied in 4th chapter, a different kind of yajnas were explained by the Lord. So karma culminates in jnana by yajna. By yajna means, as we studied, that yajna means Vishnu, or Yajna means the action to satisfy Vishnu. So, by purification of heart through yajnas, one actually comes to the platform of jnana, knowledge. So, but if it is the case, then after achieving jnana, one must retire from activities. That was Arjuna's point or thought. Because in third chapter also, in verse 17, Bhagavan said that Atmani eva cha santushtaha tasya karyam na vidyate. So, who is self-content, he has no work. He has no more work to do. That is why Arjuna thought that karma sannyasa is superior. It was his idea because of these two things in chapter 3 and chapter 4. That is why he asked the question in the beginning, that which is superior, karma sannyasa or karma yoga? And in answer to that, we started that Bhagavan said, Sankhya yogo prithak balaha pravadanti na panditaha, who says that Sankhya and yoga, that is karma sannyasa and karma yoga, is different. He is a child. He is not an intelligent or learned person. So that is why we see in this section, in this chapter, Bhagavan established how jnana also culminates in nishkama karma. Jnana culminates in nishkama karma by equal vision. Equal vision. Who is tadatmanaha, that is, whose mind is always fixed in Bhagavan, he must be samadarshi. He must have equal vision. And who is tat parayanaha, whose only refuge is the Lord. He must be sarvabhuta hiterataha, because as his only refuge is the Lord, he knows it very well that the Lord's lotus feet is the refuge of all the jivas. So he sees no difference between him and the rest of the jivas. So he is sarvabhuta hiterataha. He is engaged in the welfare of all the jivas. So we see that that point we just said in third chapter, Atmani eva cha santushtaha tasya karyam na vidyate. It does not mean that he will sit and meditate all the day and renounce all the external activities and will think about his spiritual growth only, his liberation only. No, it is not the case. That is what Bhagavan is saying. Atma Rama has no work, yet he is karma yogi. So actually, who has no karma of his own to perform, he only can be a karma yogi. Who is still having many karmas to perform for his own, he is not eligible for a karma yogi, to become a karma yogi. So Atma Rama, who is self-content, who is Antar Aramaha, Antar Sukhaha, Antar Jyoti, he is only able to work as a Nishkama Karma Yogi. So that is why Bhagavan is saying that he can be he will be able to perform welfare activities for all the jivas. Sarvabhuta Hiterata. Because we see there must be an outward expression of our inner feeling. In our day-to-day life also we see this, but we feel, we express accordingly. So the outburst of the supreme knowledge is Sarvabhuta Hita, and he is Rataha in Sarvabhuta Hita. For Loka Sangraham, as we studied, for Loka Sangraham, as Bhagavan cited his own example and the examples of Janaka and the other great people. We can also think about Yudhishthira Maharaja, Ambarisha Maharaja, Parikshit Maharaja in this connection. So they all were liberated people. They all were situated in perfect knowledge, in absolute knowledge, and they were always engaged in the welfare activities of the entire Brahmanda. So that is what Bhagavan said in this section. So with this, we will end today's session. वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो